Hey guys, Scarpanella. Welcome back to World of Tanks. Today I'm kind of doing a series. It's called Let's Talk World of Tanks. Series is all about the game mechanics and even my opinion about them and some possible options on how wargaming might be able to balance them. By the way, I'm not a community contributor, I'm all doing this by myself. I have planned this series a long time already and it may sound like a good idea. So, by the way, this is going to YouTube. But yeah. So, if you watch this on YouTube and you do enjoy this Let's Talks, then put it in the comments and to at least show me that you enjoyed this series and that you want it to continue. And by the way, always leave a like and do subscribe to the channel Scarpanel on YouTube. Follow me on Twitch. Because I will do this series on Twitch. I will stream them in the beginning and then I will upload them to YouTube. Because I know to some people it's more or less a, how can I say this, there are some quite difficult subjects to talk about. And one of those subjects I'm going to talk about today. Now, of course I'm talking about the artillery game mechanic. Right, artillery is in the game for already the game's entire lifespan. So let's say 8 years. World of Tanks is going to turn 7 this year. At least on the PC version, it's turning, at least it's already 3.5 years old on the console version. At least on Xbox, and it's already 2.5 or even 1.5 years old on PS4. But yeah, what is this so? Well, of course I'm talking about the SPGs, also known as the self-propelled guns, self-propelled artillery pieces, known as artillery. Artillery is in the game since the game's beginning. It was there since the beta, it was there since the alpha. It was there already. Because the game is actually designed around the artillery mechanic. A lot of people don't know that, but it is really that simple. Artillery is, because the game is all being built around the artillery mechanic. Wargaming is always trying to figure out how to balance the artillery and even how to balance the entire game. Well, balancing the entire game is easy. Balancing artillery is going to be a difficult task because they have to rewrite the entire game. So, let's go to the first thing. Why do people hate artillery? Well, artillery is kind of an interesting story. Artillery, as I said before, is already a long time in the game. But the reason why people do hate artillery is because people get one-shotted by artillery all day. And that's really a big thing. If you get one-shotted by, let's say, for example, a T-92, which does 2000 damage with its high explosive shells, and I believe somewhere around 1800, 1900 with its AP shells, it's kind of a big deal, because it can cripple a lot of tanks. It can one-shot almost every tank in the game. At least it can one-shot every tank in the game. Except for the mouse, but the mouse is just a different story that we don't talk about. But yeah, let's talk about the artillery itself. In reality, artillery was supposed to be a self-propelled gun system, which was supposed to give support to the allies, or even to the Axis, at least to the people on the battlefield, to the infantry, to the mechanized infantry, and all that stuff. Artillery has been used since the 18th century, on which they invented a cannon. The cannon was already a part of an artillery system. Of course, it's a lot older, I realize. I'm sorry for that. Because look at the trebuchets, those big catapults. Those were the first artillery. The bow and arrow, artillery, mobile artillery. Also the sniper. Of course, with artillery, it's more or less you aim up, the round or the projectile makes a small loop, at least a small bow, small rainbow, down onto the enemy, which is basically the artillery thing, a theme. Of course, over the centuries, it's being mechanized, it's heavily modified, all that stuff, and eventually they came to the cannonballs, the cannon itself, and eventually the ship artillery. piece, naval artillery. Naval artillery is an entirely different story, but since we're talking about artillery in this episode, I'm going to talk about naval artillery as well. Of course, by naval artillery I'm talking about big guns of above 250 caliber, at least millimeters, even 175 millimeter caliber guns, even sometimes 130, but it depends on what you place it on. For example, a destroyer has a 100, for example, I'm using a Soviet destroyer by the way, has, for example, a 130 millimeter naval cannon. The term naval cannon is more or less artillery cannon. It's more or less the artillery piece on the ship that it's being used as. Also, I'm not really certain how I can speak this out, but artillery has been in reality in the world for a long time already. I told you that before, but it's really old. And yes, that's the thing. It's really, really, really old. Artillery is really old. And we're still using it. Yeah, let's go back to the artillery subject itself in World of Tanks. Of course, because I'm talking about naval artillery, I'm talking about normal artillery, I'm talking about self-propelled guns, I'm talking about stationary guns and all that stuff. Railway cannons, also artillery, and a lot. Even the rockets, artillery, as of today, they're artillery. But yeah. What has artillery to do with World of Tanks, or even in reality? In reality, it's a support vehicle. A self-propelled gun is a support vehicle. In reality, let's take for example the Panzerhaubitze 2000, Panzerhaubitzer 2000, which has a 155 millimeter artillery cannon with a smart round. I have to tell you that, a smart round. Of course, those things are supposed to fire at least around to at least 20 or 30 kilometers away from them, which is a good thing, because it can support the infantry troops to fight the enemy. If, for example, you need a building down, you need to take down a building. That's a really good example. No? That's a really good example for a thing. Yeah? A really good example. Artillery, at least for example, we have infantry troops pinned down on a position. Just infantry. Just normal infantry, for example, yeah? Let's say American troops. Yeah? Good? Alright. The American troops are fighting the Taliban. The Taliban is placed, is sitting down in a dip, and the US soldiers cannot get them out. There's no tank that can get to them because, well, they have RPGs. And they have machine guns. They're with a big number. So they call in a strike. They cannot call in an airstrike because they're inside enemy territory. So what do they call? They call it the artillery piece. The artillery piece then gets the orders and gets the command to fire at the designated position. Let's say coordinates 225-450-Foxtrot Charlie Omega, for example. Yeah, I'm not good with those kind of things, but for example, it's that. Yeah. So let's take that for the example. The artillery crew members, by the way, the artillery crew members go up, load the gun gets to the firing angle, gets the coordinates, it's being put inside the firing computer. The gun automatically gets to the designated firing position, aims the gun, it's loaded, fires the gun recalls back, gets back into the loading position, which means 0 degree angle, just a 0 degree angle. That the crew again loads in the round, fire places in the back charge, closes the breech. Of course, it's a big breech. The gun goes back to the firing angle, fires again, gets recalled, recocked, gets the round in, round gets rammed in, another back charge goes in, and fires again. That's what artillery is supposed to do. And of course, the American troops, we still take them into example, that were pinned down, are getting the orders, at least are getting heard, are getting news that the artillery has fired. So, what do? Well, they stay in cover, and eventually they take down the Taliban, for example. I'm just using that for example because the war with ISIL is still going on. That's why I used this example. But, it has worked. It has certainly worked. Because the Taliban is dead, for example, stopped. Because the artillery shells hit them. The infantry can get in. And can go further. That's what artillery was supposed to do. In the naval variant of artillery, you have, for example, cruisers, destroyers, battleships. Also some aircraft carriers which have artillery, but those are only small caliber artillery pieces, and of World War II I believe 125, 127 millimeter secondary artillery. But yeah, that's just secondary. We're talking about main artillery guns, so aircraft carriers are not being placed inside the list. Yeah. Now we take for example the guns of the USS Salem. An auto-loading 203 millimeter artillery cannon. And it has, I repeat, 12 of them. Or 8. No, not 8, or 9. 12 or 9 of them. Four free turrets, both with 3 guns in them. Yeah, those are naval artillery pieces. But it has a lot of them. And with those artillery pieces, it's the same thing. It fires, for example, a 203 millimeter round, which is the diameter of at least 1.5 meters, weighs around 900 kilograms, for example, or 500 kilograms. Of course, it has black charges, 9 of them, or depends on how the round is designed. If it has and of course if it's a powder loading mechanism, powder feed, powder bag, anything else like that. And of course I'm talking about the powder bags on the USS Iowa, for example, because the USS Iowa had the 4 6 millimeter shells, which used 6 powder bags to propel the gun forward enough and far enough so it could definitely hit the target and penetrate the enemy ship or even enemy target at a range of 40-50 kilometers. Sometimes at least even 30 kilometers, effectively and accurately. Further than that, well, of course it has to get the gun arc, it has to get in range and fire its guns again. But still, those rounds are heavy enough. But let's go back to the Salem. The Salem used, I believe, 4 or 5, maybe 6 powder bags to fire one of those shells. Those shells weigh a lot. But still, for shore bombardment, the artillery was quite easy to use. It was quite easy and quite handy. Because, for example, D-Day. US cruisers, US and even British cruisers, even, no French cruisers, but only Allied cruisers, bombarded the shore with big lobbing shells. Really those gigantic flippin' shells. Which supported the infantry at D-Day on Omaha Beach, so they could make the push. Of course, there still did a lot of dying happen, but besides that, it has helped the infantry. And yeah, that's basically almost in with naval artillery, because you also have the shore batteries, which are also big naval artillery cannons, which have the 203, 406, 406, maybe 385 millimeter cannons. Those are also powder bagged artillery pieces, which of course the people that manned the guns had to manhandle, load the shell manually, ram the shell in, place the powder bags in. Of course, those rounds could kill a ship, at least could knock out a ship, for example, or could sink a ship at a big range. But what has this to do? What does this have to do with normal artillery in World of Tanks? Well, In the Second World War, and even the First World War, artillery was used heavily as a support device. For example, the 105mm howitzers of the French in World War I. They were used effectively. They were supporting their troops. In World War II, they were supporting the tanks. They were supporting the infantry. They were pushing up inside, for example, the Siegfried line. Artillery was used to bombard the Siegfried line. To just hunt out, just get out the Germans. Yes, I know I'm not playing a game. I'm not playing World of Tanks right now because I'm talking about stuff. Yeah, that's at least a good thing. Yeah, like I said, this. In reality, artillery just helped people. It saved lives. It did a lot for them people. What does it have to do with artillery and World of Tanks? Another question. Still the same question. Artillery in World of Tanks is a different zone. Look, World of Tanks was is the actual first free-to-play tank game. And also a big one at its market. What does it still have to do with that? Well, the World of Tanks is designed around the artillery mechanic. Somebody at Wargaming once said that. I believe I saw it in a video on which the community contributors are going to the Wargaming HQ in Minsk, Cyprus. Damn it. This is kind of a difficult subject, but I know I have to lay this subject down for the first time in history. Yeah. Slava Makarov once said that artillery is a mechanic in the game that needs to be looked at. Because artillery, as it was before on PC, the artillery update happened with the stun mechanic, which was secretly above. Nobody knows that, but everybody knows that, and everybody thinks that, but it's true. Wargaming secretly buffed artillery with the stun mechanic because the stun mechanic makes them stronger, makes them more or less damage dealing and high XP earning class. You got that not from me. It's not from me. Yeah, Slava Makarov once said, artillery needs a nerf, a high nerf, because if you get one shot at every game, by an artillery piece, it's not fun. Well, the game motto is more players, more fun. And we don't need money, but we want a fun player. Good game, happy player. Free game, good game, happy player. Not one shot at player is sad player. Of course, I'm also looking at Death Stars and Jaegerus, but this is going to be my next topic, the tank destroyers. I'm already thinking about that. It's already going to be my next topic. Yeah. Look, artillery without stun artillery with stun needs to be removed. Yes, on PC. At least the stun mechanic needs to be removed. That's a good thing. Because right now in World of Tanks console, we have artillery that's still hard hitting, high splash damage, high damage, one-shotting machines of doom or that strikes fear even inside the player and into the player while playing the game. For example, let's take me for example. Yeah, I'm driving my Pershing. I'm trying to free market. Yeah, I am actually trying it. And I get in the beginning of the game, I get spotted. I'm staying in one position for too long. Artillery shell lops into me, penetrates my tank, one-shots it. Everybody loses their mind. And that's not a good thing. And of course, that's also part of this series that I'm trying to find, at least that I'm telling you how to avoid being one-shotted and all that stuff. Because I got experience with being one-shotted, and of course I did play a bit of artillery, but I also play other tanks as well. Of course I sold my artillery just because it's too boring. And that's true, artillery is boring. Yeah, that's just really true. But yeah, to go back about the artillery mechanic itself. World of Tanks was designed around the artillery mechanic. And yes, it's no lie. World of Tanks is designed around the artillery mechanic. Because the artillery mechanic is the most difficult mechanic to implement. Because every time when a player uses his artillery and fires the gun, he rolls a dice. Because even a well-aimed shot by artillery can miss the target by a country mile. So let's take for example, the T-92 heavy motor carriage, or like most of them call it, the Doom Cannon, or the one-shotter, or the armor piercing spammer. Because that thing, once it hits, if it hits an ammo rack of a mouse with armor piercing, which it will certainly do, it kills it one shot. If it hits with high explosive at a T-135, it cripples it. So it's more or less the Doom Cannon, or the Holy Mother Cannon. Holy Mother of God. That's how I name it, the Holy Mother of God. Yeah, let's take that gun for example. That gun has an armor-piercing shell which has 312 millimeters of penetration, more than a Death Star. Does more or less 1900, 1800 damage per shot. Fires 1.82 or 1.5 rounds a minute. Of course, it's a long reload, but it is a big shell. You have to take that into account. It's a 8.9 inch shell, a cruiser cannon shell, or battle cruiser, or heavy cruiser shell. So yeah, let's take that gun for example. It is aiming at, for example, a Waffenträger Auf E100. It has high explosive loaded. Waffenträger Auf E100 is staying in one position, unloading its clip. People on this team request help, requesting fire at ... Let's say Sergei von Schnabel. I'm just saying a name, making that one up. Yeah, just making that one up. The Waffenträger is unloading its clip. His team is screaming for help. The artillery is aiming at the Waffenträger, which takes 8 seconds, or even sometimes 7 seconds to aim. Only to aim. Once aimed, its bloom has shrunk. The accuracy 0.8 something. I'm just gonna look that up, because I want to use good examples. I'm just gonna look that up for a second. Let's see. Yeah, aiming time 8 seconds. Accuracy 0.9. So that means that if he fires, he rolls a dice. The dice of RNG. The artillery shell fires. Its round is flying with 400 and something meters per second, 492 meters per second, which is a slow shell. So it already takes 2 or 3 seconds to lob the shell to the target. Artillery misses by just 20 meters. Does little damage to the Waffenträger Auf E100. Is friendly that asked help, requested fire on the Waffenträger, gets killed. Artillery did nothing wrong then. He tried to be a good guy by killing the most dangerous target in the game, the Waffenträger Auf E100. But he missed by a country mile. The guy missed by a country mile. It did nothing more than just 100 damage, or 50 damage, or even no damage because the tracks aided. That is a heavy loss for an artillery, because that shell already costs 2,500 credits a shell. It has, I believe, 18 of them. I believe, or even 14. I don't know. 60 shells. Was close. Yeah, that's a big loss. Even if that heavy tank we're talking about was being one clipped by a Waffenträger, he missed. The artillery missed. Waffenträger lives to reload and fire another shell, fire another magazine. Of course, as an artillery player, then you blame Really, you blame the RNG for that. Of course, you get one-shotted once in a while by an artillery piece. Of course, I'm talking about me, for example, and a lot of my friends get one-shotted by artillery as well. But they blame artillery. No, artillery is just a luck. It's not even skill-based, it's more or less luck-based. That's why the game is based around the artillery mechanic. Of course, you can do it like Armored Warfare. You know, less damage, great aim time, great reload, but you have to relocate after one shot. At least every shot you fire, because the enemy artillery gets to know your position, the exact position from where you fire. And that is a good mechanic. I really do. But yeah, why do people hate artillery? People hate it because it has the high amount of damage. It is not mobile, like the French artillery. It is not accurate, it is not fast firing, it is not fast aiming. No, but when it hits, it does a massive amount of damage. That's why the people hate the artillery. Of course, when it's on your team and it hits the target and kills it, then you get assistance damage. For example, if you're driving a medium tank, like I mostly do, and fire, get spotted, and I spotted the enemy back, and I have an artillery on my team, and he hits him for example 1700 damage, which is the equivalent of a T10 heavy tank, of a Tier 9 or a Soviet heavy tank, the T10M, and he one-shots it. I get happy. I'm happy because he one-shotted a dangerous target. But if I then see a Death Star, I spot it, I get afraid. I curse myself for spotting that T10 first. So, because artillery is reloading and the Death Star has time to aim at me and fire at me. So yeah, I'm basically doomed. Unless I pull back. Yeah, that's why people hate artillery. Artillery hate having artillery on the enemy team, even sometimes on their team, because they won't do a thing. Because after every time the artillery fires, it rolls a dice of RNG. Dice of you being fired at, or even you being killed. If it fires at you, or at your teammates. It also rolls the dice from, if it hits, does it penetrate? Does it kill your tank? Does it destroy a lot of your modules? Does it destroy a lot of your crew? Of course, I hear people saying that you can use a spall liner, but what if you don't want a spall liner? For example, on a medium tank, you don't need a spall liner. You need fence, rammer, and, for example, coated optics, or even depends on what you want on that slot. You don't want that. You don't want to have. You don't want to sit there when you're being when you're emmerwrecked and your track is blown off. Sitting there from when is the other show coming? You don't want that. And Wargaming has seen into the problem. And which is my second point. Which is my question. How will they balance it? Which is the question that I hear people ask a lot as well. How will they balance artillery? Well, the question is, how do you want artillery to be balanced? Do you want a stun mechanic, on which they get the supporting class but also the high damage class and still have the capability to one-shot a light tank at even 20 meters distance? When it's driving forward, it still tracks him, and it has, if it doesn't have a repair kit and even a med kit, has to reload to fire again at that piece, at the light tank, and kill it with one shot if it penetrates. It still has the ability to penetrate the light tank with high explosive shells. Do you want them to be implemented like Armored Warfare? Which means, of course, low damage, high rates of fire. Of course, with low damage I mean heavy tank damage. 400 damage for the... At least you know, with the highest being 750. That's the E100 damage. Yeah, I'm talking about the E100 then. Yeah, you know, 750 alpha damage. Every shot, but then has 4 rounds a minute rate of fire. For 750 alpha. Every artillery piece, except for the French, because the French get 400 alpha damage then. Because they have the weakest caliber gun, the 155mm. Or do you want them to be removed? But then you have the problem of if they remove artillery, how can you balance the other tanks to move without artillery? How can you, for example, balance the T-29 then? Do you make his cupola weaker? Do you make his top turret weaker? Do you make his gun mantlet weaker? No, because you get players angry. If you remove artillery, you get other players angry. The artillery players you're making the artillery players angry. Or do you want Wargaming to leave out the stun mechanic? Yeah, leave out the stun mechanic. Have the low damage. Have the faster rate of fire. And like Armored Warfare for a little bit, they have to relocate after every shot. Just in case the enemy artillery gets a notification from, oh, that's where I am. Oh shite, let's move away. Do you want that to happen? Or do you want Wargaming to at least do something with artillery themselves? Like, for example, give him a life. Give him the ability to go tank destroy mode easily. Because that's more or less luck based. So it's more or less difficult to do that. And even if they want to implement the stun mechanic, even if they have to rebalance the artillery, even if they're gonna do that, which they did on PC, it will still take a lot of years to do. Slaven Makarov once said that at a conference, at least not at a conference of Wargaming, but when the community contributors visited them, he said, if you want the artillery to be balanced, it'll still take a lot of design the entire game to focus on the artillery mechanic. You need to retest the entire artillery mechanic itself. You need to retest it, you need to reconfigure it, you need to redesign the entire thing, and then of course you need to redesign the entire game around that meta. For example, you need the heavy tanks to be balanced against each other as well, so, because the artillery can do less damage, but have a higher rate of fire. You need a new feature to be introduced, so that needs to be tested as well. For example, the stun mechanic needed testing. It still took half or even 1 year to test the stun mechanic before they implemented it. For example, it was on the sandbox server. Well, it still took 2 years to develop. Because every time you place a high change in the game meta, in the game code, you need to redesign the entire game around it, which means a big update. For example, 2 or 23 gigs. And of course with what Wargaming NA does with the console version, if they want to have if they update the servers, so they can make the game smaller, you need to re-download the entire game only for a smaller size. That's what they wanted you to. That's what you needed to do when they implemented the new artillery mechanics. You needed to basically download the entire game again, 4 gigs again to download, because the update redesigned the game around the mechanic. And of course, which comes to my final point. If artillery still stays like this on console, high damaging artillery, how can you avoid being one-shotted or even being hit by artillery? Well, that's the thing. Know the maps you play on. Get map awareness. Get to know where cover is at the right time. Not only that, get to know your place in the game. For example, I'm driving let's say, of course I'm using a lot of examples. I'm driving a medium tank, TVP 50/51, which I don't have, but yeah, for example. Or my M46 Patton. Let's take that for example as well. Yeah. We're playing on what map is artillery, which has cover to artillery, and which map has open fields so medium tanks and light tanks can play around with. Even heavy tanks. Prokhorovka, for example, which has a big ridge in the middle, a big hill, on which light tanks and medium tanks always like to rush to, use the gun depression, get the early spots in, and all that stuff. So let's take that for example. It has 2 rocks on which you can hide behind against artillery. Even if you do, the artillery still has a 50-50 to splash you, which it will never do because it cannot hit you. Also, it has the hill to use as cover, because artillery cannot hit you after behind the hill. So they have to aim further to fire at you. That's also a way to avoid it. Learn the terrain that you're playing in. Same thing with T-29s, with tanks that can go good hull down. Use the terrain to your advantage. And to artillery, against artillery, that's the greatest thing that you can do. If you don't have cover, and you get spotted, and you know that artillery is going to hit you, because you're endangered to the enemy team, move. Use the hippie shake, how they call it. The shimmy shimmy. Just go forward, make the turn, and then wiggle your tank. The hippie shake, the shimmy shimmy. Wiggle your tank. Just wiggle. Then you avoid being hit by artillery. Maybe you splashed. You get splashed by artillery, but you cannot get hit with high amount of damage. Of course, this is the reason why I wanted to make this Let's Talk World of Tanks. It's just because I wanted to do a different thing. I mean, I've been playing World of Tanks for 3 years and I have a good understanding of the game mechanics itself. Kind of a good understanding. And its history. Yeah, and this is actually why I wanted to talk about artillery in the beginning, because artillery kind of lays at stake. You know, it's the biggest hate ever in the game. The biggest flippin' hate in World of Tanks. Artillery gets the most hate, even more hate than E100 that knows how to play, even more hate than the Death Star, more hate than the Jaeger, more hate than the TDs, which also are kind of high damaging compared to the Force 155 Wargaming. But I'm gonna talk about that in the next topic. Yeah, enough about that. If you liked this stream or even this video, because this is gonna be at YouTube, please leave a like, follow me on Twitch, even subscribe to the channel on YouTube. And by the way, if you want me to do more of this, which I will certainly do, if you even have tips to make this better, leave them in the comments section below, because I will certainly take a look in that. And for certain, tomorrow I will make a section about tank destroyers. It's gonna be a good one. At least I hope. Because artillery and tank destroyers are a thing which I don't know a lot about. So that's why I also covered artillery first. And of course it's a sentimental mechanic in the game which still needs a lot of explaining to do. So that's why I tried to do it as good as possible. But yeah, enough about it. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, Scarpanel on YouTube. Or if you like me to do this on stream more often, but then also play a game, then yeah, please leave a follow, and then I will certainly take a look at that and I will do this more often. Alright guys, I'm Scarpanel, and I'll see you on the next one.